Welcome to the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers of Washington and its monthly author showcase. I'm your host, Mark Miller. Author Mark Allen is visiting with us this month at the Bremerton Kitsap Access Television Studios. Mark is a triple threat artist, being a screenwriter, a filmmaker, as well as now the author of a new book, Nocturnal, an unusual tale of vampires and the undead. Mark, welcome to Claw and the BCAT audience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now to start out with, can you give us some history as to your creative efforts in the horror genre and how it led to your book, Nocturnal?
I've been writing ever since I was a kid. I used to spend my summers in front of a manual typewriter pounding out short stories that were always horror related. I grew up watching the Universal monsters, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy and all that, and it just built over the course of my life. And by the time I'd gotten into my 30s, I wanted to write motion pictures, and that got me on another direction, but it kind of led me around back to this because novels are my first love. And about 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer and had to face the very real possibility that I was going to die very soon. And I had this story rattling around in my head for a while, and I decided if I'm going to write it, I got to do it now. And here we are.
About how long did it take you to write the book?
About 3 years.
About 3 years?
Yeah, because I kept rewriting, and you know, it's a process, and it was starts and stops because I had radiation and chemo and all that other kind of stuff going on and all the related stuff. So there were periods of time where I didn't write for weeks at a time simply because I was too sick and too weak. And then as soon as I could, I would get back to it.
I understand you have a short clip of one of your horror films, and I also think you might have a teaser that you put together for Nocturnal also.
Yes.
Maybe show the audience so as to give them an idea of where your creative juices lay.
Sure.
Dana,
Pete!
what are you doing back on the island?
Just visiting an old friend.
Way things were when you left. I figured you'd never visit anyone around here again.
I saw Tim Walters.
That's the name you all said. You never said it.
Tim Walters has been dead and buried for years now. Who's Tim Walters?
Nice, or should I say, brrr, scary. So now we come to Nocturnal. I call this book Vampires with a Twist. What prompted you to write about vampires?
Vampires are a wonderful symbol of life after death. They're kind of a dark mirror to the idea that there is something afterwards once we die. So vampires are really fertile ground to talk about some very universal themes. Our own mortality, our fear of death, and hopefully our immortality once we get beyond that point.
In your work, vampires do not shimmer or twinkle in the daylight, correct?
That's correct. They do not shimmer.
What is the day-to-day life, or should I actually say an existence, of your vampire? And he has a name, of course.
Yes. His name is only mentioned a couple of times in the book. His actual name is Eddie Marks, short for Edward. But he, throughout most of the book, I simply refer to him as the vampire. One of the things that I wanted to do in this book is set him apart, put him at arm's length from humanity. He doesn't look like us. He's not a young, romantic, beautiful person who's very seductive. He definitely looks different from us, and he acts differently from us.
Can you give us a specific on his looks that somebody might notice if they passed him on the street?
Well, because he has no blood flow, he's pale. His skin is the skin of a true dead person, so it's waxy, it's kind of grayish with a tint of yellow to it. He does not look like he's alive. He looks dead. Another thing is that because he is a creature of the night, his eyes, I based the biomechanics of his eyes similar to the eyes of a cat, in that he has more rods than cones, so he sees better in the dark. And his pupils are actually dilate out completely to cover the entire surface of his eye, so that when he's in an environment that to you or I would be pitch black, it's just kind of mid-gloom to him. He can pull in that light and see where everything is. My vampire is a predator. He is a great white shark on two legs. And that's exactly how I wrote him. So it's what Stephen King calls the mutant factor. When you create your monster, you have to make them different, because we humans, one of our weaknesses is that we are instinctively afraid of people who look differently than we do. You know. So, yeah, he looks different because he is different.
And one thing I wanted to throw in there, because we were talking about this, there's something also that most people wouldn't even think about, but something about the hair.
Oh yeah, his hair, the follicles don't grow because he's dead. So his hair simply hangs limp. There's no body to it. And he's worn his hair pretty much the same way for the last 130 years, because if he cuts his hair, it's not going to grow back because the follicles are dead. So if he was to cut his hair, it better be a style that he likes because he's going to be with it a long time.
So he is truly, in a way, frozen in time.
Yes, very much so. Both physically and to a degree, he's also emotionally locked in the past because of some things that happened over the course of his human life right up to the point before he becomes a vampire.
So your experience with military medicine helped you with writing about the effects of vampirism?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, he's a walking corpse, period. That's what he is. He is a walking corpse. So in addition to the skin and the hair, you have to ask yourself other questions about, well, does his heart beat? No. Well, how does the blood circulate? Well, it's magic. In fact, he refers to it as magic. He refers to his entire existence as magic because he doesn't really understand it himself. But he's a very pragmatic man, and he just simply accepts things as they are. And then he pushes forward. He's the kind of guy who tries to make the best out of a bad situation.
you talked about him being a land shark, and part of the story deals with the violence of your protagonist as a vampire seeking his food, human blood.
Yes.
Would you say the drive for his food causes his oft-times extreme violence, or are there other reasons?
Oh, there's definitely other reasons for why he does what he does and the way he does it. In my book, the vampire has kind of a psychic ability in that in passing someone on the street, or if he's in the same room with someone, he can see something that we can't. He can see waves emanating off that person, and he can tell whether they're a good person or a bad person.
So you can see the aura of the person.
Yes. And he's the kind of guy that if you're a good person, if you're someone who, works 2 or 3 jobs, you work 12 hours a day to put shoes on your kids and to put food on the table, even if he's out hunting, he will leave you alone. He won't touch you. If you're bad, if you're evil, if you're a pimp, if you're a drug dealer, if you're a rapist or a pedophile, he's going to know. And God help you if you cross his path. Because this is a guy who's not just going to, bite you on the neck and lap your blood like a puppy. No, this guy's going to rip your arm off at the socket, and he will beat you over the head with your own severed arm. And then he will bathe in your blood.
So he's definitely not the old Bela Lugosi idea.
No, he has no Hungarian charm.
And in fact, he's even, I guess you'd call him a Christopher Lee type on steroids to a certain extent.
I'd never made that connection, but yeah, he's Christopher Lee on steroids, that's for sure.
His character in that what this individual does for an actual employment, because he has to try to exist in normal society, i.e. he has to have money or something, otherwise the average person is definitely going to notice there's something going on.
Yes.
So can you give us a little bit of detail as to the exact job he does and why he does it?
Sure.
In addition to that, I wanted to delve into what happens when he starts his day or his night.
Okay. Yeah, he's like, in certain ways, he's like any human. He has to be able to make a living. And since he is a creature of the night, he has to be able to work at night. But because he looks so differently, he needs to do something where he can work at home. So my vampire is a stockbroker. And he trades on the Asian markets, so that in the middle of the night here, when he's awake and able to work, the stock markets here are closed, but the stock markets in Asia are in the middle of their day. So he caters to Asian clients, and he caters to the, like Shanghai and Macau and the Tokyo markets. And that's how he makes his living, is he's a stock trader.
Does he then, because of course he's had kind of a long existence, he speaks foreign languages?
He probably does. I didn't go into that in the book, but yeah, this is a guy who's been around. And you were asking about how he starts his day.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of have you go into detail, because
Okay.
this is one of those little things I think that sets it apart from all the other vampire books I've ever read.
Well, as we've established, he's the walking dead. Emphasis on the word dead. During daylight hours, he is actually a crumbling, desiccated corpse. That's why he has to be in a dark place before sunrise, because he literally dies at dawn every single morning, and he reanimates at night. So everything comes back. His breathing comes back. He coughs dust out of his lungs. his skin has to come back a little bit fuller than what it was. And he has to worry about being able to stand. When he first gets up, he's actually quite weak, and he staggers and has to put his hand against a wall. He keeps packets of blood that he's bought from a contact at the local blood bank, and he keeps expired bags of blood that would have been destroyed by the blood bank, right? Well, he buys them under the table and sticks them in his fridge. So the first thing he does when he wakes up is he grabs a coffee mug, he squeezes out some blood into his cup, he nukes it in the microwave to warm it up, and then he drinks that first mug of blood like we drink coffee. You know, it's what gets him back firing on all cylinders, you know. And, you know, he's, one of the things I ask myself is, okay, if he drinks blood, he's on a pretty much a liquid diet. So what does that mean for him physiologically? Well, it means that his body functions, his elimination is going to be different. So he urinates differently from us. He poops differently than us. You know, these are the practical physiological things that my vampire has to deal with. You know, is how does he do all this stuff, his day-to-day existence. I had never seen it addressed in any other vampire book or any film that I'd seen. And I thought, well, why not address it? You know, as a person with a medical background, I was curious about that. And since it had never been done, at least to my knowledge, in a book, I felt that I had free reign. I could do anything I wanted with it.
And that's the one thing that, like you said, really fascinated me about this specific character and also your book, is because you delve into some of the details, like you said, that most people don't even think about.
Right.
You know, we either go the old glamour routine with the shimmering in the light, sunlight,
Yeah.
or we do something else. This makes the person more of, or the being more of a realistic being that we can try to identify with and figure out, oh my God, what would it really be like to that existence? And that's why I really really think people should get out there and get this book. I think it was gives him a slightly different whole twist in the whole vampire genre.
Well, it's a character study. You know, essentially, I wanted to write an action novel. You know, so you got the police and you've got the drug dealers and you got this war between them, and then all of a sudden this vampire inserts himself into it for reasons that only he understands, and they become clear as the book goes on. But, you know, he's alone a lot. So I said, okay, what I've really got here is I've got an opportunity to do a character study on a vampire in such a way that has never really been done before. Because of my background, I bring a unique perspective to it that I personally have not seen.
You have a bit of a plot twist you wish to keep secret. So it is safe to say there may be additional books on the blood-drinking denizens of the night.
Oh, yes. Yes, this could, if this is well received, this could definitely turn into a series.
And I understand your wife is also working on a novel, so I guess there may be other works in the literary pipeline.
Yes, that is true. She's a very talented writer, and she doesn't write horror. She writes more of the cozy mysteries type of thing. It starts out with a murder, but the emphasis in the book is always on the amateur sleuth and how they solve the crime.
If someone wanted to meet with you to discuss filmmaking and writing in the horror genre, how can they contact you?
Best way to contact me is through email at tinfoilhatproductionsllc@gmail.com. They can call me, area code 619-208-5469. I'm always open to speaking about the genre and about the craft of writing in general. And I have a blog. I recently started a blog online called This Horror Writer's Life. And they can email me through the blog site too.
I'd kind of like to give you a final word with this interview. Is there anything you'd like to pass on to our BCAT audience about how you work through the craft and art of writing?
The craft of writing, as in any artistic craft, if you want to do it for a living, you have to balance the artistic side with the business side. And there are days when the business takes over, there are days when you're free for the artist to take over. And it's a very delicate balance. You have to be free enough so that you can be creative and let things roll. But you also have to have a very serious mind about it and be disciplined in your craft. You know, writers write. You have to sit down and you have to do it every single day. And give yourself permission to write a first draft that's terrible. Everybody does. My first drafts are bad. David Morrell's first drafts are bad. Stephen King's first drafts are bad. Everybody writes a terrible first draft. What's important is to get the flow of consciousness and to get the story down. And you start chipping away at it and crafting it to get it to a professional level through the rewrites. Part of writing is rewriting. So.
Well, thank you, Mark, for coming over to the studio to record this show.
It's my pleasure.
Your creative abilities will be an inspiration to many people. I do look forward to working with you in our local writing groups and filmmaking groups in the greater Kitsap area.
Me too.
I would like to thank all of our viewers for turning into Bremerton Kitsap Access Television in viewing this Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers production. I also wish to thank the BCAT staff on cameras and in the director's chair. Our next broadcast is scheduled for March, when another of the fascinating artists of Kitsap County will grace your TV screen. So to keep in touch with our Facebook pages to see what Kitsap authors we'll be interviewing. I hope everyone has a pleasant day and a productive and fascinating new year. Until next time, I am Mark Miller with Kitsap Literary Artists in conjunction with Bremerton Kitsap Access Television. Good day.
In San Diego, America's finest city, a war rages on both sides of the border over drugs and the money that comes with it. It breeds savage violence and brutal death. They thought they'd seen it all. They were dead wrong. Nocturnal, the new novel by Mark Allen. Available in paperback at createspace.com and through amazon.com. Available exclusively through Kindle for ebook. On sale now.